Welcome everyone to Politically High Tech with your host, Elias. I have a guest here, and before I introduce him, all I want to say is right now, you want to keep this book in a category called fiction. I'll just give you a little hint. Keep it in a category called fiction. Because, and without giving too much away, if we don't get our act together as Americans, this is one of the potential realities. And God forbid it happens.
Amen.
So I'll say probably the slightly sickening parts, I'm excited to have this conversation. I don't know, you call it sickening or just, maybe I'm just curious. Tone deaf and a bit, I'm showing like I demonstrate mental illness if I keep saying that. I don't want I'd stop my intention at all. So I'm just curious about this, but get into the author's mind just a little bit. Of course, no spoilers. I mean, I'm against
unless
that.
I do them.
Yeah. You go to his side, and I let him spoil by accident, but I might even cut those off because since I have a good idea how the book ends and all of that, I'm going to just cut those off. So, no spoilers. I could enforce it. Thank goodness I read the book, so it's going to be no spoilers. Of course, that'll be up to the author as well, because there's probably going to be certain things I don't even realize could be a spoiler as well. Yeah. Definitely something like the ending, for example. Cutting that one off instinctually. That's nope. So I don't care. The author's okay with it. I'm saying no.
No, I definitely won't be revealing the ending. So
support this author, man. And let me introduce his name. This nameless author. Well, I'm going to fix that right now. I'm going to give her a name. His name is William R. Now, what I'm going to call that R. You ready? Ready for the bad future or reckless? Yeah. For writing this dystopian future. But seriously, he's accomplished author. It's not the first book he has written, by the way. He written a story based on Revival baseball. So that's another thing as well. But we're going to talk about, I'm going to nickname this, it's already part of the title, Civil War 2.0. The first Civil War was really bloody. Okay, we know about that one. That was spoiler-free territory. And that was the most bloodiest conflict. There you go. Yep. Look at that.
The sum of all our anger. Civil War 2.0.
That cover right there. Yeah. You see that flag? That flag, it's an important piece of the story. I'm not going to say much about it unless we somehow get there. But I'm going to do my best just to be restrained because I just hate spoilers personally and all that. So he's an author, and I'm sure I won't be surprised you're a Christian person that believes in God because there's a good amount of God references. I mean, I will be foolish not to make that connection. I'm a Christian myself.
Yeah, definitely a conservative Christian. So,
and I'm not even surprised by the political leanings of the authors. Conservative or Christian. But Christianity is important, even though I am a moderate, but I would say when it comes to Christianity, I think I join the right wingers in that. Religion and God is important. I know a life without it. It's a mess, just to say it mildly. And I go to my old episodes about that. I'm not going to regurgitate on that.
Sure.
It's all about William here. I'm just a side character who's guiding the conversation here. So let's welcome William R. Douglas. What do you want the listeners and viewers to know about you?
Well, first of all, Elias, I want to thank you for inviting me on to Politically High Tech. It's an honor to be on your show and talk about my second book, The Sum of All Our Anger. And I'm an author. As a side trade, really, my full-time role is I'm involved in the information technology field. But this is my second book. My debut book came out in 2022. It's called The Death and Resurrection of Baseball. It's a futuristic novel. It takes place in the year 2166. The sport of baseball has been dead for 100 years, and this 12-year-old boy who's the hero of the book becomes involved in rediscovering the sport and trying to bring it back from the ashes of a a second civil war. So, so I wrote this second book about a second civil war, and here we are on your podcast to talk about it. So I'm glad to be on your show.
Yeah, and the year, it's not very far off from the revival of baseball, is 2061. Okay, and I think April it started. Correct me there. April.
Yeah, no. The first book, the baseball book, starts in the year 2166.
Oh, yeah, I'm aware of that one. I'm talking about the second one.
Right.
Yeah.
A strong thread in the first book has a tie back to a fictional second civil war 100 years earlier. The book that we're talking about today, obviously, is about that second civil war. And book time, the book starts in January of 2061 with the inauguration of a new president who's openly socialist.
And yeah, that one is quite the character. I'm just gonna say that in a very bad way. Yeah, that guy. I'm not sure I want to say his name, but
well, he's on the back of the book cover, so we can safely say his name and not have it be a spoiler. So.
Oh, okay, right. Cyrus Devon. Okay.
Yeah, Devon Cyrus is the name of the
look at that. Flip that.
fictional president who's openly socialist. So. Yep. And the general synopsis is that he wants to finally do away with the last vestiges of what he calls the old way of America, which is the conservatives and the Constitution, etc., and wants to bring about a socialist utopia. And he has something called the New Way policy that's supposed to, get rid of the last part of America from the old way, and introduce America to this new way of thought and thinking and governing, and so that's the gist of the story from the antagonist standpoint. That's what he wants to do to the country.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning, Texas already seceded from the Union. That was very and there's a Latino leadership there, and that's actually quite interesting. I'm not surprised that was going to happen eventually. I think that's just a slow inevitable.
Yeah.
Not because of geography and cultural influences. It's not because the second Alamo happened where the Latinos killed off the white people. Not that. It's just I'm sure it happened eventually. So why you pick 26? The way I see it now, the way you put these two together, it seems like the second book is kind of like a prequel in a way.
Yeah, a very loosely tied prequel. There's two characters in the Civil War book, Jackson and Deshaun King, that are mentioned in the baseball book from a very famous battle scene that's depicted in the Civil War book. So loosely tied prequel, and the genesis of the story was. In doing a lot of interviews on the first book, a lot of podcast hosts were asking me, well, you're going to write about the war that's in the book? Because it sounds pretty horrific, And so that was the germination for that. Of course, a lot of the things going on with the country right now, with all the divisions going on left and right and all the tribalism and everything else going on. And so that definitely had a huge input into prompted me to write the story. That and 8 grandkids and a ninth one on the way, and my grave concern for their future as well, given all the divisions we have going on in the country.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I have grave concerns. I thought I would have wished this would have magically disappeared, but if you don't do something about it, like I said, I don't want this book to be an accurate predictor. I want this just to be. I was going to throw this out there. Conspiracy theory, fiction, okay? And that's not even conspiracy theory, just fiction. You want to just put into fiction. You want to keep it in the fiction category. Forget conspiracy theory. That was a dumb take. Just keep it in fiction.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's what we want to do. We don't want this to be a future act. We want this book to be visionary for the wrong reasons, because it is, especially the way we're going. And the left attacks the right with racism, and then of course the right attacks the left, a bunch of commies and loonies and all that. I think both of them, sadly, they play a role in that. And I like the breakup because I think that breakup was going to happen. The libs are definitely the left, the communists. I mean, as left as they could be, the moderates. If I'm assuming if I'm alive at that time, I would be a very elderly person. I'll probably just have all this white, and a few of them fall off at this point. I would. Yeah, I'll definitely be in the mod camp. I generally
Yeah.
don't swing too far because I believe you swing too far, you lose IQ points and sanity for both sides. But there's one thing I'm not going to compromise in. Yeah, I think if he was president, I think I would have temporarily joined I would have been a mod, probably joined a conservative, just for the fact that you're just disrespecting the Constitution so openly. Like, and I know his goal was to, I think, yeah, he wanted to burn all things that was old America, like wipe them out clean, burn them. That's enough just to turn me, just for me to be vocal. And so no. We could do some left wing policies. I think that could still be pretty American, but not this burning, not this censorship, not this we wasn't re-education camps. So I'm definitely against that. That's something that communist China does with Uyghur people. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want? Do you want that?
Was that your or mine?
So yeah, if you want cancel culture and concentration camps and just toss out the American Constitution, have no regard for it, then yeah, you are a communist, and I'm going to join the right because that's just too radical.
Yeah.
For a modern person like myself.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think it's important for the conversation to really take a step into the forest, as it were, and look closely at what is going on. I'll offer my perspective. Certainly welcome yours, Elias. Obviously, since you're the host. So,
go ahead.
So, what I see is that so our current status is that there's all this focus on the extreme right, that they're dangerous, they're fascist, and add every other name that is currently in use and in vogue. And so everybody's so focused on the extreme right wing that I think they're missing the real threat. I really believe this. Of course, I believed it so much I wrote a book. But I think the much greater threat really comes from the extreme left. And let me explain why. First of all, when you take the Democratic Party from its famous and from its Rooseveltian fame, its Harry Truman fame, its John F. Kennedy fame, all of whom were great patriots and great Americans, great lovers of our Constitution, and again, patriotic. When you take that kind of picture, a word picture of what the Democratic Party has been in the past, and then you take a look at what it is becoming, I think you can make a case that there are grave concerns. And for me, the concern is that the extreme left wing that has infiltrated the party is really using it as kind of like a Trojan horse, a proverbial Trojan horse. They're using it to accomplish a goal that has nothing to do with American patriotism or the Constitution. It has everything to do with a socialist agenda. And the evidence for that is really quite strong. If you take time and look at video of some of the protests from the last several years, there's no need to mention the names because everybody knows them. You can look them up. And there's one thing that really caught my attention before I started writing the book, and that was that a lot of protesters were carrying these protest signs that they seem to look alike, even though there's a protest in Seattle, there's a protest in Minneapolis, a protest in New York, a protest at Columbia College, and all these other places. And there were signs that had the same phrases on them. They had the same logos on them. And I what is this all about? Because are these people traveling back and forth, or what? What is going? Or is there someone behind them promoting these signs and distributing these signs? And so I took a close look at some of these signs that you can see in the videos. And believe it or not, they were all tied to various socialist / and or Marxist organizations. And a common thread for all of them is that they hate capitalism. They really don't much care for our constitutional republic. And they wish to literally, burn it all down, deconstruct America as it currently exists, and reconstruct it with a new charter that's Marxist / socialist and as its core, and also embrace a socialist economic model. And they really, I think, have a solid toehold within the Democratic Party and are a significant threat to our republic. And so part of the theme of the book is to highlight this threat, obviously, and in fiction form, imagine what happens if their power base, which is currently a minority within the Democratic Party, continues to grow and expand and, I would say, trick Americans. And eventually, 40 years from now, approximately, we reach a tipping point where their power is enough to ascend to the White House and then try to, again, deconstruct the country and for the purposes of rebuilding into some kind of socialist utopia. So, some of the groups that I mentioned, that I discovered were the Democratic Socialists of America, the Workers' World Party, the Industrial Workers of the World, and also the Revolutionary Communist Party USA. These were some of the sponsors of these protest signs that we saw. They have since calmed down considerably, thankfully. But just before college let out, of course, they made a reappearance at a lot of universities. Some of these signs and these organizations that I mentioned, and to every one of them that I just mentioned, they are very anti-capitalist, very decidedly Marxist and or socialist, and very decidedly are calling for some kind of revolution, even violent revolution, in order to rid the world of the scourge of the United States as we currently know it. So, and obviously, I'm deeply opposed to such an undertaking.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, well, that's all right. This is why I'm a moderate, because I'm fine with peaceful protests.
Right.
But the thing I would criticize is, and overthrowing, getting rid of capitalism. That's a non-starter for me. I won't even negotiate with that. I think capitalism is a flawed system. I think it's the best system that we have as of now. Okay, and it's the best system to actually combat poverty. And this is why sometimes I challenge, especially some of the judge rules on corporations, because it's just too corporate. You got to challenge corporations, not the capitalist system.
Yeah.
What they do is create a bunch of laws that rig the system. And if they want to use their energy more productively, you protest against those corporations, and they don't want to fund these things. And yeah, I'm not for the whole. I'm fine with protests, just not that whole violent overtaking and getting rid of America and just destroy and reconstruct it to their image. Not for that. Not for that. That's why I could never be. So I could never consider myself a progressive or even a far left side. I get some of your criticisms. I get it. There's just some problems with it that I'm just not. I'm pretty loyal to the Constitution. I mean, sure. I criticize the right on some things.
Yeah.
Are there extreme right that are the problem? Oh, yeah, of course they are.
Yeah.
But the only thing is, I think the problem with the media, and I'm going to criticize the media, and I think you alluded to this a little bit. Feel free to correct me there. They're more focused on the far right.
Correct. It's very obvious.
And a lot of them turn a blind eye, against the more radical left wing personalities. Well, that's why they got alternative media that lean right to expose those people. I wish news could be more. We go back to more objective news that could show what's the good, the bad, the ugly on both sides. That's the kind of news I would want. I'm happy that there's actually papers and even subscriptions that are working on that. I want those to grow, because they give a more fair perspective on what's going on. So just saying, William, I'm just using for example, is a white supremacist because he supports Donald Trump. That's of course that's propaganda, that's sensationalism,
right,
that's evoking disgust, anger from their audience, which is mostly left leaning people,
sure,
moderate and left leaning people.
Yeah, I mean, I have 3 black grandchildren. I would take a bullet for any one of them. So the idea that because I'm a conservative, I'm therefore a fascist is complete lunacy. That's part of one of the themes that I hope people get out of the book is this idea that we can certainly take the bucket called white supremacy, Christian nationalism, and call it out for what it is. But I think we enter dangerous territory when we say that conservatism equals white supremacy or conservatism equals Christian nationalism. I reject that idea. It's equally absurd to say that liberalism equals socialism / Marxism. Of course not, it does not. Kennedy was a liberal. And when you look, going back to the Kennedy administration, I mean, is there any bigger evidence that he was a patriot than going toe-to-toe with Nikita Khrushchev? And Nikita blinks first. And the Cuban Missile Crisis is resolved without a nuclear war. What would happen in our current era if somebody put nuclear missiles in Cuba? Anybody ever think about that? What would we do now? Would we be willing to go toe-to-toe with whatever belligerent were to try and do that again? And I don't know the answer to that question. And yet here was Kennedy, in the second year of his presidency, and he has this crisis that almost ends the world. Very two distinct worldviews, obviously, went toe-to-toe. You had Marxism going toe-to-toe against a constitutional republic, a capitalist economic system, and Kennedy was a fan and a patriot of our constitutional republic and the capitalist system. We could, we're not here to hash Kennedy's faults. I mean, we all know them. They're all over the place. I mean, but, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, okay? But the fact is that Kennedy was a huge patriot. And I don't know what would happen in our modern era. I will say this about President Biden. I think that he is also a strong patriot. I really believe that in my heart of hearts, even though I didn't vote for him. But I do believe that there are people counseling him, trying to influence him, who are not either blatantly not patriots at all or far less of a patriot than President Biden and certainly President Kennedy. I will say that for sure.
I think the Republicans, I refer to them as caretakers or something, that guide him around, influence him, and I don't take joy just looking at Biden's cognitive decline. It's really just sad. Really, I mean, Biden was never going to get my vote regardless because I just sat out that 2020 election because I thought both candidates were dysfunctional for different reasons.
Yeah.
But Biden's cognitive decline, it was like no joke. I think if I were to take back probably some of my old podcasts, I think I would have eased on the insulting. But I rarely did that. That's why I was calming down already a little bit because saying, you know what, it could be someone I know, and there's like a link, like a minor genetic history of dementia in my family. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got to be more cognizant of that. I got to be more alert of that. Can I disagree with Biden and his policies? Yes. Was there a few good things he did? Yes, he did. I just wish he fought against corporations harder. That would have got my vote because corporations are too big and too powerful. But there's a recent judge ruling that is saying that the Google monopoly is illegal. They control the search engines and all that. So he has a big clap. Finally, the courts are challenging the corporations because that was my big concern. Yeah. So I don't care you're Democrat, Republican, or majority. I just think just challenge corporations, and that's just me going off the rails a little bit. Let me get back to the topic at hand. There are Democrat patriots, for sure. Not every single Democrat is. I'm sure you already said Kennedy, Biden. You're of course aware of this.
Yeah.
But the Republican TV personalities, I laugh at some of them because they just very sensationalize some of them, and they're not helping either. They just say, oh, all the lefts are communists, or they all like weird, or they all like children and things like that. And then the left got their nonsense, so that all right wingers are racist. They're all psychotic, gun loving people that will hunt anyone that doesn't look like them, which is nonsense too.
Yeah,
Both sides spew
almost a
sensationalized
caricature.
nonsense. Yeah,
and that's the theme in the book too. Is that in 2061, all this tribalism gets really pigeonholed into three labels that this character Devin Cyrus has championed and really deeply ingrained it into the psyche of Americans. So the three labels, of course, being the cons, CONS, and the mods, MODS, and the libs. And only he's successfully turned the cons label into a pejorative. So if over half America is calling someone a con in book time, it's a negative connotation, and he's done that purposely because this sliding of the dial politically that's ongoing in the Democratic Party from historically a left of center range. It would kind of bounce back and forth. You had Roosevelt trying to go really progressive, and the Supreme Court brings him back a little bit towards the left of center again. And then you had Bill Clinton try to go hard left, and then he loses Congress, and then Newt Gingrich comes in with his Contract with America program, and which accomplished much. I mean, it was a very from a political science standpoint, what a great study to see what happened in Bill Clinton's presidency once he had to come back to left of center and govern from that position in a bipartisan way. And they got a lot of stuff done for the American people when they did that. But in the book, of course, the future president wants to take this dial and just move it as all the way over to the left, the needle all the way over to the left, and he does this under this this Trojan horse scenario. And he's taken the mods. The mods in the book are what I would say are traditional democratic Americans, patriotic, Constitution-loving Americans. And he's taken them all and put them in a label called the mods, and it's the libs or the hard left wing that has now assumed power. And the mods are not, in the book, are not viewed derogatorily. As long as they go with the program, then everything's cool. The cons, on the other hand, are saying, no, we are a constitutional republic. We wish to remain a constitutional republic. And we don't want any part of a socialist economic model. We don't want any part of Marxist ideology or a Marxist government. And so that's what starts the snowball effect in the book that leads to, the subtitle's right there, Civil War 2.0.
And to add to that, large waves of secession for so many states, especially dominant states. I'm using the terminology of the book. And not just that, I think this socialist president, he even target mods that seemed like they were cons too, because some of them went to education camps. I caught that detail as well. And I'm not surprised that was going to happen because, just like you said, as long as they go along with the program, some were questioning the program, some were hesitant, so even mildly speaking against it. Re-education camp.
Right.
They were just like the con, con in the skies.
Right. And in writing the story, at the very end of the story, or the end of the book, really, I wanted to give some very insightful links for people to go to and read these stories that were in the news that either very strongly tied into themes in the book or had a connection to themes in the book in some way or form or shape or form. And of course, if the Kindle version, you just click the link that'll be in the ebook version. But Obviously, the paper version, you have to type it in very carefully. But the point being is that there were so many stories that came out when I was writing the book, and the theme was already, in one of the chapters I was either currently writing or one of the previous chapters I'd previously written. And it was actually kind of spooky to have these stories come out during the whole process. And then there were stories that came out that touched upon themes that was already here that I was getting ready to type, into a future chapter. And so, there was a story about, Hillary Clinton wanting to send MAGA supporters to re-education camps. I was like, wow, she actually said that. So, and there was a story in the New York Times, an opinion piece by Harvard and Yale law professors who both wrote in an opinion piece, and it's one of the links at the end of the book. They both wrote that the Constitution was broken and unfixable. And I thought, oh my word, that's why we have amendments to the Constitution. They've been tweaking the Constitution since the Republic was founded via amendments to the Constitution. So to come into such a major newspaper, viewed by and read by literally millions of people around the world, literally, and to come out saying, "Yeah, our Constitution is broken; it can't be fixed." I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy talk. And one thing I wanted to do too for the readers, especially readers like yourself that are moderate or left of center, I wanted to make sure that the stories that were cited at the back of the book, that none of them were from Fox News, because I know half the country doesn't trust the mainstream media, and the other half doesn't trust Fox News. And so I made sure that these links were from mainstream media sources because of their relevance, the plot of the book, and the themes in the book. And there's so many of them. One of the stories was about a gymnastic group in Seattle. They were wearing American flag shirts, and they were told they were triggering people and offending them. And they were forced to cover up their team jerseys because they had the American flag on it. And I'm like, wow, well, where is this? There's people that want to get rid of the American flag, and there's people who want to tear down statues of historical figures, even Abraham Lincoln. I mean, my word, you want to get rid of Lincoln? I mean, he saved the Union. He emancipated the slaves. Why would you want to get rid of Lincoln? I mean, you can make an argument for some of the others, but, and all this stuff.
I mean, let me introduce to the statues.
All this stuff.
Let me introduce to the statues, because there's a lot I got to say about that. That really actually pissed me off when I saw the Abraham Lincoln said, he's the one that accelerated freeing a bunch of slaves. I mean, initially that wasn't his intention. He wanted to preserve the Union, but still, the impact was he freed a bunch of slaves. And you know who kind of set up that trend? And I'm going to use the cool word for the kids in the DL down low. George Washington. He was dying. He freed his slaves because he knew eventually that was become a boiling point issue.
Yeah, I think
and they defaced him and damaged his statue.
Yeah,
you know where you should be attacking a statue and things like Margaret Sanger, who was a eugenist and a proven racist. Okay, who said negative things about dark-skinned people. All right.
Yep.
But I won't even attack that. You want to know why? We need to know the good, the bad, the ugly of history. So the reason why we have to know the ugliness of history, even slavery history, so that we will not repeat the lessons again.
Yeah, and in writing the story, I was very careful.
I got worked up. I'm sorry.
It's all right. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate your passion. But in writing the book, I was very conscious in putting some of the ugly warts of American history in there, especially in chapter 1, when you have the president of Texas talking about Texas's involvement in slavery in the early part of the 19th century, before the Civil War. And so those are in there. They're in there as a lesson for all of us, really, that when you talk about America and its history, you have to acknowledge the ugly parts and warts and all, I call it. But you can't and shouldn't try to erase the memory of them and the history of them, because how are you going to learn from your mistakes if you're not teaching future generations what those mistakes were and how we remedied them? And so you talk about our current era and, the mistakes that had people all upset, and, parts of the country even considering socialism, and their attacks on capitalism. I'll say this. So capitalism is the greatest economic system ever invented in the history of the world. But capitalism has a cancer, and the cancer is greed. And greed can be legislated away. It can be regulated away. And there's a way to do that. And smart minds, smarter than me, should be able to come together and figure out how to do that and not have the concentration of wealth that is extreme right now at the top. There's nothing wrong with accumulating wealth. I mean, that's all part of the American dream. There's nothing wrong with accumulating wealth. Don't get me wrong. But when you have the excessive accumulation at the expense of workers' wages or their retirement programs or whatever, then that's a problem. That's a problem. There's a verse in Scripture where it says to pay the worker their wages. And I think it's more than just paying them something. When the Lord tells us that, I think he's referring to pay them what they're due. So somebody's, doing their due and doing a good job, pay them what they're due, not what you think you should have to pay them just to, in order to continue hoarding wealth for yourself or for the top level executives.
Yeah, and that's what breeds this appeal to socialism.
Correct.
This widening income inequality gap, and that's what breeds it, because people don't see hope options. That's why I even said it look, left wingers, if you're gonna try to provide alternative paths to jobs and all that, I'm for it. Just don't have to just stay on welfare for the rest of their lives or
Correct.
something. Have them create a ladder for them to get some share of that glorious American pie. Just don't baby them too much. You get like step 1, 2, or 3, and then 4 or 5. They got to start figuring some of it out on its own, and if they fall back down, help them create more economic opportunities. That's why I support in general.
Sure.
I think more opportunities, the better. It'll definitely lessen crime. It'll definitely lessen this appeal of socialism and communism. And that's stuff I know from history. Since I'm a history person, that's why I was able to personally enjoy this book and was able to just read through. I mean, certain details are still a little fuzzy for me because, to be honest, I had to kind of, I try to set as much time as I can for those books. I want to make sure I get as much understanding in a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
But no, it's a great read, people. You should read, especially if you want to get an idea what the bad future could be if we don't do something about it, because it's massive tribalism.
Yeah.
And you're a history buff, or you love realistic based fiction, I guess.
Yeah.
I was just gonna call it like that, and fiction eventually becomes reality. I mean, look at sci-fi. Cell phones used to be considered fantasy. We got them.
Yeah.
The phone's a smartphone. So, in a weird way, these fictional things could become reality. But I don't want it for this case, for this book. Not for this book.
Yeah.
Not for this book. Okay.
Right.
You want to make sure that, just to put it jokingly, this author was kind of nutty and kooky, but at the same time, he was teaching us a lesson if we don't do anything about it. But
Sure.
really, he's a creative teacher in this book. Let me be serious.
Yeah.
And we want to keep this book, like I said, in a category called fiction. Keep it fiction permanently.
Yeah.
We don't want this to become a reality, because the way this current trajectory is going, it can become reality. I'm surprised you say 2061. Me, I thought it would be by 2040, but
well, I have to say, I did it intentionally, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this could happen a lot sooner than 2061. But I put it out there intentionally because the goal really is to get people on either side of the political spectrum to get this book, read it, ingest it, dwell upon it, and figure out, okay, what can I do from an individual perspective to contribute towards lowering the temperature, to listening to the other side, and making sure that any part of the scenario that's in this book never ever comes true, ever. And so, in that way, it's a deterrent. As you correctly point out, too, there is some history in there. There's to educate people about the Constitution, our founding documents, and parliamentary procedures, and so on and so forth, and freedom of the press. And these are all themes that are touched upon in the book. And you also touched upon it earlier, too, Elias, is the idea of, in a very subtle way. It's not preachy, it's not proselytizing, but there is a subtle thread in there that tries to point people back to God, which I think is a very important thing for me personally, and I think would help lower the temperature down in our discussions with our fellow Americans.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I noticed that too. I say there's a good amount of pointing to God. I think that's wonderful. And for those of you who want to be offended by it, well, you need to handle your demon. Go get help with that, because God wants to help you. Okay, God really wants to help you. You have to be ready to receive the help. Okay, you gotta be ready to follow some spiritual laws. I'm not gonna make this too spiritual. I can't easily, because I do have some spiritual background as well. But I am not going to do it. But I do believe the importance of God, because I'm seeing what's going on. I mean, let's point the New York City. We're drifted away from God, and look what's going on. I mean, we was doing good leading to 2000s and 2010s, and by the time we hit like 2014, 15, I started seeing the decline, and I was against this mayor since day one. And this is why I started noticing I am not as Democrat as I think. And I will start voting more red, because I already seen it. I studied my history. I said, he got influence with the Sandinistas. I said, no, that's a communist group in Latin America. No. That's disturbing to me. And yeah, he ruined the city. And it's worse. This mayor, who is not doing any better either. He's more of a bot compared to the other mayor, Eric Adams.
Yeah.
He's not doing such a good job. He's more like a regular corporate cop, Democrat he's pretty corrupt himself.
Yeah.
But the other mayor was definitely a lib. If you want to use your book's terminology, he was definitely lib. He was definitely leaning socialism. He tried to deny it, but his tendencies and some of his policies.
Yeah, right.
I would say at least small bites of socialism, just to put it like that. And and other cities, I'm sure got this problem as well. Maybe more or more or less the same, or it's just people. You gotta learn history. I'm not trying to demonize one side of the aisle, but if they're extreme right, I've condemned them too with their craziness, their goofiness.
Sure. Yep.
Because I'm trying to calm down temperatures both sides as a centered, independent voter. Who see, I think it's best that certain Democrats that give my votes and certain Republicans that give my vote. I think they're trying to be an adult in the room and make deals and all of that. I mean, let's just put back to the election. I mean, very recently, some of these progressives are losing the primary. So Cori Bush of Missouri.
I just saw that today. She lost her primary yesterday to more moderate Democrats. So
Jamal Bowman, my state of New York.
Yep.
The extension of the squad. Yeah, they're losing. They will be considered the libs in the book. They're definitely
absolutely.
And definitely Bernie Sanders. He's like the king of the socialists of American politics. Bernie Sanders, he's the prime example. I think the moderate would have been me. Maybe Kevin McCarthy, if you want to throw him in there. Definitely Mitt Romney, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, more like the moderate, right? They would definitely be thrown to the mod, because they're too moderate for the conservative camp. And then for the left side, I would.
I'm still a Romney fan. I thought he would have made a great president at the time, but of course it didn't happen. But I, as a conservative myself, I bristle at this trend to, use the term rhino and take great patriots like Mitt Romney and somehow make them out to be something that they're not, which is, ridiculous. I mean, Mitt Romney is equally as patriotic as any recent president that we've had on both sides of the aisle. So the same with Murkowski. And so, yeah, I bristle at that tendency to do that. I think that's part of the poison of tribalism. It's so rigid. You got to be in this bucket, and if you got one finger sticking out, sorry, you're out of the club. And it's a good thing that there are independents in the country, because historically it's been the independents that have brought the pendulum back. I mean, when it goes too far in one direction, the independents step in and say, no, too far. And it goes too far in the other direction. The independents step up and say, no, too far, come back. And I think that's probably what you saw with Bowman and the gal in Missouri, Corey Brooks. The pendulum went too far to the left, and moderates and independents said, no, you're way too radical. We're going to bring you back here. Meaning the district, of course, that they voted in. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out for the rest of the election cycle up and down the ballot. If that's a canary in the coal mine, those two primaries, then that's going to be very telling come November what happens. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the opponent that beat it, Cory Bush, he's a young black gentleman.
Yeah.
He was definitely more moderate. I read his profile briefly. Yeah, he was definitely more moderate. He was definitely he does favor the Israel on the side of the conflict. So AIPAC is influence, which I don't blame the progressives for criticizing that part of it. When it comes to Jamal Bowman, I think he was going to lose even without AIPAC's intervention, because he lost by 17 points, which is huge to a moderate. And I like George Latimer, so I'm happy that he won.
Yeah.
I was actually happy about that one. So no, he needed to go. He was very irresponsible on Jamal Bowman. I was happy that he lost the primary.
Yeah. Where do you live in New York?
Yeah, I live in New York.
The city or the state?
The city. I live in the city, but he doesn't represent me directly. Okay. But I'm just happy that Westchester County got a more grown up who's going to get things done. Yeah. He's a very big name, George Latimer, because he's an A-lister. So I knew he was going to win, but with the AIPAC money, it was a blow. Yeah. I think he would have won without it. That's my theory. I think the margin of victory would have been small. I think he would have won by 7 points instead of 17. Cory Bush, I think if AIPAC support didn't come in, I think the moderate would have lost, because the victory margin is only by 6 points.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's not a big margin right there. I would say like 5 or less is a small margin. 6 to 10 is moderate. It'd be plus the more than 10 is it's pretty big. At least that's my measurement. People could debate that. There's a comment section for that. Debate that if you want.
Sure.
So maybe there's some correction. I call that the correction when it's going too radical. I decided it gets pulled back to the center. Yeah. And I try to do that, but I'm very unsuccessful in New York, because New York's still pretty blue. It's a pretty blue state. Yeah. And, states like Utah, I'll be unsuccessful there too, because that's a very red state. So I got to throw in a counter, the Republican side of it. They got their states where they have strong control right there.
The presidential election for the last couple of weeks, all the news that's been going on there. What's your
I've been very critical of, I'm going to organize it like this. It's already been established that Trump picked J.D. Vance. I personally think that's a mistake. I think that's ruining his chance to win. I have to be honest, he's not media savvy. Almost every time he speaks, there's internet memes. The media is attacking him. I'll say a lot. And some of the Democrat insults are sticking to J.D. Vance. I mean, Trump could fight back verbally. I mean, we all know that, especially 2016. He took down some of the biggest names in Republican politics at that time. I'm not too concerned with Trump there, but I think he made a mistake picking J.D. Vance. He had better vice presidential picks. If he would have picked someone like Tulsi Gabbard, should definitely draw in more independents. When you pick a VP, you need to broaden your base. Stop trying to please your established loyal support. You got them. Got to expand. And the other one, Kamala Harris, first pick is the current Minnesota governor, Tim Walz.
Yeah.
He's quite interesting. I'm not sure if he moderates the ticket. Maybe except for the veteran. He's pro-veteran. I think that's a very good thing for a Democrat to be very pro-veteran. Because Republicans easily throw the attack. Oh, they're unpatriotic. They're communists. They want to destroy America. So I guess there's some defense there, but there are some policies he pushed and how he handled the riots. I could see Republicans have a lot of golden ammunition to attack there.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, the whole riot thing is going to be an issue, I think, because if you're the governor, at least from a state perspective, to borrow Harry Truman's phrase, the buck stops here. And so I can see one day a riot, but then 4 days of riots and you've got a very minimal to non-existent response to it. That's got to raise a lot of questions, and I think that will probably come up in a vice presidential debate, which is going to be interesting because even though Vance is obviously a conservative, he is quite intelligent. I saw some quotes from some of his professors out east, and they were highly impressed with his level of intelligence. And he's also a very learned constitutional scholar. And so it's going to be interesting. Combat veteran, but also he's got that folksy thing. Obviously Trump's an East Coaster and born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but Vance grew up dirt poor. So he's got a little bit of a folksy element going on. So you've got, on the one side, you got the older guy nominee with the young vice presidential candidate, kind of folksy. And on the other side, you got the young gal, relatively speaking, with the older vice presidential candidate. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
I don't look at it that way. Wow. See, that's why I love talking to different people. Expands my view on things. Yeah. I really didn't look at it that way. I'm just trying to look at quote political pragmatism in quotes because I'm just usually losing that.
Well, I was surprised. I was surprised that she didn't pick either Shapiro or the governor of North Carolina, but what was really causing some buzz over the weekend was Mark Kelly from Arizona. And out of all of them, I think Mark Kelly probably would have given her like a 10-point boost in the polls because of his background. And talk about balancing the ticket, because he's definitely a patriot, he's a veteran, and of course an astronaut. As you know, even though the governor of Minnesota is a veteran, his policies are very closely aligned with Kamala. And so from a perspective of policy and the political dial where it's at, I think they're so close to one another, they're almost going to be undetectable by the voter. So I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Talk about Tim Walz's policies. I think they both are failing to get the moderate based on that. And that's what my focus is. You got to get the moderates. You got to get the independents.
Yeah, right.
But to your point, I definitely want to keep the whole moderating the ticket because I think that's important. I think they both missed the mark on that one. But
yeah, I would agree.
They both missed the mark. It's
going to be a very defined election as far as there's no fuzziness on either side. You don't have, two different needle points, if you want to call it, on the left or the right. They're both very closely aligned with the presidential candidate. And so for the voter, it's going to be interesting to see how the voter responds because, it's two very, very clear choices this election, very clear. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So in terms of being objective moderate, they both don't. They missed the mark, and I think it's sad, but it does point out and it supports so far the theory of book of this tribalism. They just going further apart.
Yep.
So Come on, people. Come on, Americans. We got to prevent this bad future. I'm very serious here. I don't love to laugh at. I have a dark sense of humor here, but this could be a potential reality if we don't get this right. And
I agree.
And political parties are definitely one source of the cancer. Greed, I like that. Greed is the cancer of capitalism. Capitalism is not evil itself. And that's what I try to tell some of my, especially left-leaning people.
Yeah.
Some get it. Some are just dismiss me, scoff me off. That's all. Oh, you're a right-winger. Oh, it's okay, stupid. You want to tell yourself that? Go right ahead.
Yeah.
I don't beg for people to listen. And it's a good part. You don't need every single person to believe you. So you got to deal with some rejection. And some conversations are going to fail. And you just got to accept that and move on.
Yeah.
Don't give up, though. Don't give up. But
no.
You're going to have to,
right.
There's even a biblical quote for that. Dust your feet and move on.
Yeah.
It's the next person. They don't want to listen. She don't want to listen. Just go to the next one. You don't need every single person. You don't need every single person.
Yeah.
And I told some left-wing person, I had that person kind of smiled. He said, you don't need every single person? No. Using enough people. And that caused, I think, some left-wing kid. I won't be surprised he's a socialist. I'm not going to say his name. But for those of you who are loyal listeners, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And speaking of listeners, I would like to invite your listeners, obviously, to get the book. And more importantly, to really read it and ingest, the story, because it is a very powerful story that I think both left and right will find very compelling, particularly if they would describe themselves as, lovers of our Constitution. And even if they've already started to dip their toes in Marxist ideology, I would really caution them to take a step back, at least read this book. And really take a long, hard look in the mirror and say, do we really want to do this? And the other thing would be to, obviously buy the book and leave a review to help the sales and help the message of the book spread, obviously through the selling of the book and promoting the book through reviews and word of mouth, et cetera, because I really do think that it is a timely book for our time. And it's not just an instrument of entertainment. Obviously, a lot of fiction books can be just an instrument of entertainment. This is more than that. I really believe that. There are powerful lessons in this book that, again, both sides can take away with and help lower the temperature and contribute towards a solution whereby none of the scenarios in this book ever come true. So I hope that your readers will take that to heart and pick up a copy.
And if you don't, I'm going to give you just a general picture. Remember the first Civil War. It was fought with guns, and we didn't have nuclear weapons and mortar weapons that could disrupt societies. Okay?
Yep, that's right.
So,
and I mentioned that in the book. The idea of a second Civil War on American soil with modern weaponry is just, it's unthinkable of the carnage that could be wrought against our own citizens in such a scenario. That's why we all have to, left and right, and in the center, endeavor to, do our part, contribute towards a political tone and discussion and posture, and even socially, the tone and posture where this just doesn't happen. It can't happen because it would be hurt.
Absolutely. So that's all I'm going to say without giving much. You already got the sample of the book, and I'm going to keep it as a sample. And look, there's a lot of valuable lessons, historical references. Don't just take his word for it. There's a lot of proven truths.
You can read Elias's review in a week or two when he puts it up on Amazon, right, Elias?
Yeah. That and check those links too. Check those links as well, especially when you're done reading the book to see what germinated this.
Those are links. Those links are powerful. And like I say, they're not Fox News links. So if your listeners are left of center, they're not Fox News links, and they're very relevant to the general storyline of the book and various themes that are in the book, and very, very relevant. So check it out.
And let's not forget his loosely tied to his first book. Okay, because you want to give him a double support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, he's not a major writer, but he makes up with quality. Okay, sometimes quality is what matters. Because you have to write 20 books of junk, and I don't care, but that doesn't impress me as much. A lot of books are junk. Let's just be honest. They're just instruments of entertainment. I'm going to use your nice, decoric language. I call them paper-filled junk.
Yeah.
This is his second book. Okay, let's just keep that in mind.
Yeah, thank you for the kudos. Yeah, if your listeners go to Amazon, you can just search for my name, William R. Douglas, and you'll see my 2 books, including the one we've been talking about here in your show, The Sum of All Our Anger. You'll also see the baseball book. So, but yeah, check it out. I've also got a website, authorwilliamrdouglas.com, and there's links out there back to both books. So, plus you can see other podcast interviews I've been on, including there'll be a link there for Politically High Tech. So once it's available.
So I mean, do you have any social medias?
Yeah, Facebook. You can look me up on Facebook and also on X. So I'm out there, author William R. Douglas. You'll find me.
I refuse to call that thing X. I still call it Twitter. I'm part of that crowd. Yes, I'm raving on that one. I'm a radical on that one. I'm a radical.
It's like Kleenex versus tissue paper.
Yeah,
It'll always be Twitter. The Sears Tower in Chicago will always be the Sears Tower, even though it's been the Willis Tower for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. At least for us old timers, we still call it the Sears Tower.
Oh, I remember that name. Yeah, they changed. Yeah, they changed it. I don't know, but Sears Tower just seems more distinct.
Yeah,
Willis is just. I guess that's just a common name. So many things I can think of Willis. I won't think of a tower. I can think of Mets Willis Point. That where the Mets Stadium is as a New Yorker. So that's not gonna help a New Yorker like me.
Yeah, right.
So I will go with. I'm going to be a young boomer in this one. Go with Sears Tower. I think the Sears store is dying, so they could capitalize that name now.
Yeah, right.
So
it's a shame.
All right, enough. Yeah. So Sears is more distinct, unique, and brandable. That's my thinking there. If you're gonna take a generic name, my brain does not compute that.
Yeah.
As a radical comes to that, it just throws it out.
Yeah.
It violently rejects it.
Yeah. Right.
So, all right. So, follow me on social medias as well for updates, maybe even a little conversation. Questions you have, get in contact with him, get his thoughts, pick his brain virtually, not literally, okay? So let's not be gross about it, people.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to say about it. So, final follow-up. Is there anything else you're going to have before I wrap this up?
Well, I've had a lot of fun on the show, Elias. Thanks again for having me on, and I hope your listeners enjoy the show too, and I'm sure we'll touch base again in the future.
All righty then. From wherever and whenever you listen to this podcast, you have a blessed day, afternoon, or night.
Bye.